Cricket et al. It's a website, it's a podcast.
Pete, it's a way of life. It's Gideon Haig over here.
Bit of Lawler over here.
And welcome to Cricket et al., your independent cricket podcast, coming to you live from the SEN box at Adelaide Oval. Actually, well, it's fair enough because Pete works for SEN from time to time, so he's got a foot in this camp already.
I do, but I don't know that Gerard Whateley's going to be too pleased with you having your foot on his throne there, mate. But anyway, what he doesn't know won't hurt him.
No, it won't. No. Pete, the match situation.
Oh, yeah, I've just taken my glasses off. Hang on a second and I'll put them back on. Yeah. I'm so vain, aren't I?
Anyway.
I've got it in my television contract that they can't shoot me with my glasses on, but cricket et al., I don't have any similar restrictions. At close of play, India are 5 for 128, trailing by 29 runs. Is that all you need to know?
That's right, yep.
Earlier in the day, Australia were rock and roll for 337.
Well, they weren't rock and roll, were they? They actually declared. They declared and set India the unpleasant task of batting through the last 2 hours under lights, with the lights holding increasing sway. And they bowled very professionally, very clinically. They bowled probably as India should have bowled last night, attacking the stumps, demanding a stroke, and India buckled before them. Didn't play too many bad shots, but that's the way in which the pink ball works under lights. It generates more chances than not.
Australia declared 10 down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, there you go. This is exclusive.
Really worried there.
Actually, Nathan was out there, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, yes, it's always a wise move to declare 10 down, I think. Because last man does.
It all happened in a bit of a hurry. With Scott Boland running off at the end, which kind of put me off. I thought, Scott's in a hurry.
Jeez, I'm thinking, what the hell's going on there? I thought, anyway, So where were we? What an entertaining day's cricket.
It was an extreme. They're very long days of cricket, I find.
Yes.
In these days and nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you tend to sort of fritter the morning away, rather, don't you? Sort of waiting for the game to start. We're getting here so early. It's like, we're all dressed up with nowhere to go.
Well, we're even stretching. We're essentially stretching breakfast out to lunchtime.
We are. Yep.
But it was just invigorating. The way this day unfolded, it was so much fun. From the Marnus Labuschagne continued on from, well, not exactly from where he'd left off, because where he left off, he was fumbling around hanging on in the dark. He'd shown promising signs, and Nathan McSweeney had similarly. McSweeney didn't last too many more deliveries in the morning, but you'll take his knock of 30 odd, won't you?
Yeah, he got a good one, as you can.
And he'd done the hard work.
And he had
survived the darkness and got his side back into the light.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, India's probably going to rue the opportunities they wasted on Friday evening. But the match was still up for grabs, wasn't it, when Travis Head came to the wicket? I think Australia was still 77 runs in arrears. They just lost Steve Smith. Caught down the leg side, unluckily. Some would say unluckily. Some would say that's the way that batting goes sometimes when you're just feeling your way.
It was a poor delivery, and it wasn't a very convincing sort of shot, was it?
No.
I mean, you always feel a bit robbed when you get strangled down the leg like that, but it wasn't the greatest of shots, to be honest.
No, it wasn't. He's battling away with he's falling between two stools at the moment, isn't he? Now he's abandoned that shuffle, so he's not going over to off stump. He's trying to stay offside of the ball. So the ball coming into his ribs or down the leg side is a bit of a surprise. He's not getting so many of them there, so it has a certain shock value. And, just feathered one through, nice catch by Pant, and that's the end of Smith for probably another Test match. He probably won't get a second innings.
So Australia had lost 2 quick wickets, and you thought, oh well, this could start moving on here, couldn't it? You weren't convinced that Jasprit Bumrah and mates weren't going to run through the Australians at that point of the game, and I got to say, on first sample of Travis Head's innings, you thought, anything could happen.
Well, you always do.
No, you didn't think anything could happen. You thought this bloke had stopped at the pub and had a drink on his way to the ground. He looked awful at the start.
Yeah, look, in some ways, it was a classic sort of situation, a perfect situation for Travis Head, because they brought in a few extra catches, they opened up a few more gaps, and that's the circumstances under which Head, who is a boundary scorer, often gets away to a flyer. I think he left his first one, was beaten all ends up by the second. He smashed the third one through the covers, and you thought, oh, that's the full panoply of Travis Head right there.
Yeah. There was another point where he reached at one, and he thought, I missed it. Then he threw the kitchen sink at the next one, and he missed it. But then he found that peculiar rhythm as his. I've likened it in my piece, as is my wont, to musical references to a Nirvana track. You know, those surging loud bits, and then
you're loud, quite loud,
louder,
Pixies.
and then pulls it back. Pixies is another good example of that style of music. But he's not a brainless slogger. No. I think he's quite a clever player. I mean, he murders the ball when he does choose to hit it very hard, but then he sets the field back on their heels. He gets them, because he hits the ball so hard. I think that you're scared to close in on him, and he'll drop and he'll run those singles and just upset the rhythms of the fielding side very well too. Yeah, but. I'd like to get back to Marnus Labuschagne, because what was his score?
64.
64. Yep. I was going to say 67. 64. There was probably 100 there for the taking. He'd done the hard work. It kind of reminded me of innings that both Ricky Ponting and who was the other one? It was Usman Khawaja played in South Africa in that last test in which Pat Cummins made his debut.
Yes.
They batted
they
through
both got 60s, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and they batted through the most difficult part of the conditions when the ball was swinging and the clouds were low. The sun came out, and they should have cashed in, but somehow they didn't. But they had set up a platform for the side to advance further and to make a bit of hay while the sun shines, or whatever that freaking cliche is. You could say it was a soft dismissal. He'd scored runs in that region of the ground in the previous overs.
Just got a little bit fiddly, didn't he, outside the off stump?
Hashirana bowling, he'd been able to score freely through there, but then they made the bowling change from that end and brought on Reddy, who I think hurried him up a little bit more. And Jaiswal was set for that.
Yep.
He anticipated that a catch was coming to him, and it did come to him. I'm not knocking Marnus, because that transformation that he has made from Perth to this match is extraordinary, bordering on miraculous. He was a guy we thought needed a padded room. Or at least a break in bloody Sheffield Shield cricket. He was a guy whose head was muddled, whose technique was kind of odd. But boy, oh boy, I don't know.
His technique looked in very good order today.
It did, didn't it?
He was industrious, as in fact he promised us. He hit a couple of threes early on, where he sort of worked the ball from the top of off through the onside, and they're confident shots. They came off beautifully. He ran three. He hit one down the ground off Siraj, and almost was desperate to come back for five. He sort of ran back a third of the way. He understood the importance of being busy today, and he made beautiful contact with the ball. He'll be chagrined somewhat that he has missed out on the 100, but maybe the talismanic presence was our friend Marnus's manager, Dean Kino, who came over today without telling Marnus and watched him get his runs.
Do tell.
Well, Dean is a friend of ours and a friend of the pod. Former Yarra's player.
Special character.
Great guy. And I spotted him out the back of the box today. Oh, Dean, what are you doing here? He said, shh, don't tell anyone I'm here for Marnus. Because I just needed to bring him some luck. And he did.
Never has there been a more nervous or involved manager than Dean Kino. Dean tells me that I think he's only watched him bat live 3 times. And what, he's made a 200 and a 100 and now this extraordinary innings. Dean was a very
Still got the magic,
man.
Dean. Still got the magic.
Dean. I loved there were a couple of on drives that I thought were magnificent, but then there were those that placement through the covers that was actually his timing and placement. He just looked on. I mean, he looked on like he was on for 150, 200 there. But that was a great knock from Marnus and a reassuring one because Australia desperately need that engine room to get going, and it hasn't been.
Yeah,
you know, all of their returns are down. You know, there's a series of innings from Marnus, from Usman, from Steve Smith, and from Mitch Marsh. They're around 19 to about 25 innings without scoring hundreds, without getting to those three figures. And you really need those runs up the top there. You know,
well, you need runs from number three. I think
especially
it's
a number three.
It's very difficult when your number three is not making runs. And I've always thought that a number three's runs should be multiplied by 1.2 because they have disproportionate value to the rest of the order. They are something around which the rest of the order can build. So
1.2.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Degree of difficulty, as it were, because it is a very challenging place to bat.
Yeah.
Anyway, Travis Head. Back to Travis Head.
Oh,
we love Travis Head.
Yeah, we do love Travis Head. There is just something so damn lovable about. He's such a likely lad, isn't he?
Yeah.
Bushy, the whole retro styling.
Yeah.
You know, the dad bod, the slight lisp, which I find quite appealing. The love of a beer. And he's beloved by his teammates. I find him he's unusually close to Pat Cummins. They seem quite very different, aren't they? Pat's, educated, cut and dried. I don't think you'd ever imagine Pat with, knocking back beers and.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we enjoy about a cricket dressing room.
Right,
is that it does bring together disparate personalities and unite them in a common purpose. It does bring together people who you might not meet in the ordinary run of things. It's cricket that brings you together, and that's an awful lot. If you've got cricket in common, that's a whole sort of shared language. So yeah, I mean, maybe it's an improbable coupling, but Travis Head is obviously very highly valued by Australia precisely because he is such a heterodox scorer. He's such a counterpuncher. You look up the word counterpunch in the dictionary these days, and you get a picture of Travis Head. I thought the situation was kind of tailored for him today because it was at 77 runs. It could be overtaken relatively swiftly. It actually needed someone to be decisive today to play in that vein. If the lead had been 150 runs and Head had got out playing an aggressive shot under those circumstances, we probably would have said, "Oh, that was a foolish expedient." But it was he was the right man for the right time today.
Yes, well, his teammates love him, Gideon. But what about his hometown?
Oh yeah.
They were absolutely extraordinary scenes. I mean, nobody does parochialism as well as people of Adelaide, really.
Yes.
Nobody embraces its own like Adelaide does with its footy teams and its unique sort of micro-sporting climate and culture. But he hit a series, like he really got going there.
He did.
Probably what was about the 70th over mark.
Well, we got into Harshit Rana. Harshit Rana had an awful day today. He went around the park and he looked a bit callow, actually. He looked a little bit inexperienced.
So I think he got, I'm not going to be exactly right on this, but I think he got around to about 98 with a series of fours of Harshit Rana. And then it was closing on, it was about 5:57 at that point. He pushed a single and it had got to 5:58, and I was in the back of the Channel 7 box, and there were desperate calls being made because the local news was about to come on the commercial television station. Desperate calls were made. At 5:59, he's on 99.
Oh my God! It could have been a Jane Savile situation, couldn't it?
Oh, dude, have I told you about that? So anyway, then I was at the Sydney Olympics in 2000. And they held the news back for their boys.
Is that right?
They did. Yeah, they didn't have to hold it back too long. It was a pretty mundane little push to bring up the 100. But the windows were open and the earth shook.
Yeah, well, we had another 50,000 plus crowd in Adelaide today. And
and there was not anybody left out the back, I reckon. I've never seen so many people in that part of the crowd.
The hill was teeming. It was they looked fully engaged all day. These have been two great days of Test cricket. For
the members
Adelaide
looked like a bloody
and
mosh
Adelaide
pit,
Test
mate.
cricket. Yeah,
It did look like,
didn't they?
Yeah. I have once they got out there, they stayed because there was a hell of a lot more fun to come. I mean, he took off and he got to about 140 odd, didn't he, before getting knocked over? Yeah. And there's a bit of ill temper around his dismissal from Siraj. Well, Siraj is an interesting cricketer. He brings a bit of that old school anger and sort of narkiness to this series. That more 2008 than 2024.
Well, of course, he has a checkered relationship with Australian crowds because of the Sydney Test last time round.
Was Travis Head in the crowd last time round? Because he gave a serious send off to Head, which I thought was inappropriate.
Inappropriate and yet strangely apposite, because that's what Head does to you. He gets in your head. That's exactly what I've written in my piece tomorrow. He makes you feel
you haven't gone that old headline again.
We'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to that in a moment. I think we should. Okay. I think he really challenges you because he makes you feel slightly foolish. He makes you feel slightly powerless. He mucks up your plans in a way. And he took the game away from India today, and it was deeply frustrating, as well as obviously they could see their 1-0 lead fading in the distance, but it was the way that Head did it that was so confounding.
Do you expect the match referee to take any action over that send off, or do you think that Head telling him to go and get fucked sort of squares it up?
Yeah, sort of. It's tit for tat. Yeah. I don't like send-offs as a rule, but I sort of got it. He had a frustrating day. He of course had dropped Travis Head on 76, I think, running back at mid-on, and then of course Rishabh Pant didn't drop him, but strangely let an edge fly between him and the floating slip in the following over, and that was costly. Pant didn't move. Pant had dived in front of Rohit Sharma the night before.
Yeah, that's right.
And nudged it wide of Sharma, and this time he didn't move. So. And he must have known that there was a vacancy next to him. So maybe this was the time when he should have dived. So he doesn't know whether he's Arthur or Martha Pant, does he?
Oh, here we go. There's Claire Lawler in the room. But that send-off ignited the crowd, didn't it? I mean, they were out there, they'd all primed on Pims,
and I dare say that Siraj will get a little bit of attention from crowds henceforth.
But I thought that it was getting a bit unpleasant. I wasn't all that happy with it. And I noticed like the Indian staff running around to him when he was fielding down there in front of that members' boundary there, and the members were the crowd in the chapel stand was giving him a gobful, and they came out and and I think because they were worried that he would react, and I even saw his teametes do similar at overs end.
They pulled him off the boundary, didn't they?
Had a break not been taken at that point of the game, I was a bit concerned that this was going to get out of hand. I think everyone needed to have a deep breath and perhaps another jug of Pims and calm down. Gideon, you ever had? No, you'd never have had Pims.
No, I haven't had Pims.
I'm not sure I've ever had Pims either. Yeah.
But look, that was a fantastic innings from Travis Head today. His third hometown 100. He'd come into this summer in no sort of form, really. I commented on it a few weeks ago on Cricket et al. That he'd had a year in which he, apart from the 100 he made here last year, he hadn't really been able to string together a series of scores. But he's a batsman to be measured by his peaks, isn't he, rather than by his consistent returns. He gets a lot of Man of the Match awards, Travis Head, including in the World Test Championship final.
I think I overheard Bharat saying that it was Virat Kohli that kind of identified his talent and brought him into the IPL around 2017 as a replacement for Chris Gale, and hence the helmet on the bat, which is a bit like a head on a pike sort of celebration,
It's like Gladiator 2. Yeah.
So that was all good fun, and Australia essentially were declared.
Declared 10 down.
10 down for 151
This could catch on.
Hey,
this could catch on.
No, we weren't bowled out. We declared. Honest.
Should we take a break on Cricket et al.
Do we ever do
come
that?
back? Look, just for the sake of convenience, just to give Dave something to do. Back in a moment on Cricket et al. And we're back on Cricket et al. Actually, we already know the title of this today's podcast, don't we, Pete?
Do we? Gideon?
We do indeed.
Oh, my God, you're going there again, aren't you?
Well, I just couldn't help it. But
one of my favourite stories from you on The Australian. And a little bit out of character with you, Gideon. You consider a sort of erudite, esoteric sort of character.
It was low-hanging fruit at the time.
Yeah, you're not really a Radiators fan, I would have thought.
Well, a couple of years ago, we were reaching for a head-related podcast title, weren't we, when we were cricket, etc. And I opted for the old Radiators classic, the old banger, Gimme Head. And
oh boy,
it went down like a cup of cold sick at the
sure
Australian.
Did. Well, we must have filed that podcast late, and you put the headline on it because I woke up in the morning, and because no one bothers you.
No, I turned my phone off.
Hi, Peter Lawler in the Gideon Haigh complaints office. And there's this string of emails sort of working its way down from the top echelons of the Australian to, the minions at the bottom. Like, can we have this changed? How the hell did this get in? Who's responsible for this?
We can tell you now how the sausage is made, or unmade, as it were.
Gimme Head.
But we're going to use it today.
Thinking?
I can't wait. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we're unbound now. We can suit ourselves.
I'll get an email from Sue.
Anyway,
like it, but she writes letters of complaint when I swear on the podcast.
After the break, Australia came out and bowled really well this evening. It was a case study in how to bowl in these conditions, I thought.
With the exception of Mitchell Starc, who didn't really exactly he struggled a little bit early. I didn't think his first. I didn't think his first spell was. Well, I guess I had high expectations after his career best figures in the first innings, but he struggled a little bit. I thought for rhythm and for line. But Pat Cummins has worked himself up into a bit of a lather there. He's looking all right, isn't he?
Yeah.
And it was an extraordinarily exciting last hour and a half, 2 hours there.
Because it did genuinely feel like there was the possibility of a wicket every ball.
It did, yeah. Did anyone tell Rishabh Pant that his side was in trouble? What were they, 4 or 5 down with a considerable deficit? That guy, he's ridiculous. That guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you reckon head's an enraging guy to bowl to.
He's like head squared, isn't he, really?
Yeah. So Boland, who has... man of the moment again, got a wicket with his first delivery, but this time managed to keep his foot in the right spot. And who was it that he got? Jaiswal?
Yes.
Cummins got Rahul, didn't he?
Yep.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Details.
Nicked him off. Very lovely ball, actually. Lovely ball.
And then Kohli had been knocked over. India are in serious trouble. Out comes ridiculous Rishabh.
Didn't get the memo.
Charges Boland. First delivery smashes him back over the head.
Boland. But the pièce de résistance was
yet to come.
The reverse fall over pull shot to third man.
Well, there were two, weren't there?
Yeah,
really?
and there was a fall over hook as well.
There was the commando roll one.
Yeah,
but then there was that reverse hook. That guy.
And the great thing is that afterwards, he never looks even slightly pleased with himself. He just comes down the wicket to his partner and touches gloves, and it's all in a day's work. What do you say if you're Rishabh Pant's partner? Shot, mate. Yeah.
Play it in the V, mate. We just got to get through to T.
No, they were. It was fantastic to watch, and maybe it was the prudent course to take. Pant always plays his natural game regardless of the circumstances. Beautiful ball to dismiss Shubman Gill, wasn't it? One of those dramatic sort of detonations of the stumps.
Yep.
And
those stumps had that gap tooth smile,
they
didn't
did. They certainly did.
We're obsessed by dental work in this podcast.
There are a few cheap boundaries towards the end, which narrowed the gap somewhat, but there's only Ashwin really of the to come in the Indian batting order. We could be out of here tomorrow night. Well, you might be. I've got one of those inflexible fares, so it looks like I'll be getting 2 days off in Adelaide.
Mate,
any recommendations?
Mate, if these two hang around, put on another 100, 150.
Okay. Okay.
No? Yeah, no?
Yeah, no.
All right, let's go to the pub.
All right, let's go to the pub. Yeah, that's all we've got time for.
Adam Collins is...
Hello,
you
Collar.
done your podcast, Collar?
Yeah.
Is it gold?
Yeah, solid 7.
Solid 7?
All your worlds are colliding out there, cricket podcast lovers.
Scenes after a test match these days is podcasters looking for a vantage point. What's happened to the world?
Yeah. The great cricketers already gone home.
Oh, they're meeting us.
Next to us.
They were recording next
right.
to you. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We're gonna meet them at the pub.
We're always
so are you
last
coming?
out. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I wish you could all join us at the Exeter, but we'll have one for you. I'll have one for you too.
Okay. That's all we've got time for on Cricket Hotel. Till tomorrow night, it's goodbye from me.
And it's good night from him.